theorizing is one thing, reality is another thing, and it's the same in whiskey. I didn't realize that my nose was that sensitive. I thought everyone else smelt and tasted exactly the same as me. Why should I think that my palate is different to anyone else? People say, oh, you know, your books are sold in their millions. You must be very happy. And I think, yeah, but maybe I could have done better. I'm dying to eat something that's got flavor, but I can't do it. Spices and what have you will affect my taste buds. And I have to be absolutely 100% confident that what I'm analysing correctly. I can show you the Murray method, of course.
In the world of whiskey, some names are carved not into labels, but into legacy. He has tasted over 20,000 drams and still seeks that one quiet pour that tells a deeper story. He's lifted Indian whiskies to the world stage and held every spirit to the same honest fame. But behind the legend is a traveler, a rebel and a soul who listens to the liquid. This is more than a conversation, it's a moment in the making. I am Madhavi, a filmmaker, vocalist, and forever a student of spirits. This space is where bottles become bridges and stories are silently sipped, not shouted. And today, we begin not with just any guest, but a whiskey legend, a man whose pen has crowned spirits, shaken markets, author of the Whisky Bible, the provocateur, pioneer, palate of the people, Jim Murray. Let's find out the man under the famous hat. Here's to legends who bottle their stories and spirits who tell their own tale, to bold sips and honest words. Welcome to the very first episode of Sip Stories with Madhavi. What a pleasure to have you here on the very first episode. It could not have gotten a better kickstart for my show.
Madhavi, it's an honour. Honestly, it's just a pleasure and an honour to be with you today.
It's very kind of you to take out some time from your busy schedule and be here with us. Thank you so much for that. So I just always wanted to know, you being known as a whiskey man, did you always love whiskey?
Yes.
Or it grew upon you?
Well, I had a very naughty uncle who, when I was about 9, 10, something like that, poured me some teachers.
Really?
Yep. And I just think he wanted to see what reaction he was going to get from me. And I think he thought I was going to taste it. And I didn't. I tasted and thought, wow, this is fantastic.
Wow.
And so after I drank it, I literally kind of had that Charles Dickens moment, you know, and just said, can I have some more? And my brother was there, my older brother was there, and he was actually quite shocked. And my uncle was in the process of just pouring the second one. And my aunt walked in and all hell broke loose. She wasn't at all impressed with what he was doing, feeding whatever I was, a 10-year-old.
Just 10?
I was 10.
You were a 10-year-old boy?
Yeah.
And your uncle made you drink whiskey?
Well, he didn't make me.
And you loved it?
He asked if I'd like it, and I said yes. I mean, he didn't hold a gun to my head. And I said yes, and I absolutely loved it. And after that, it wasn't unknown for me to occasionally nip into my parents' cupboard and help myself to a little drop of whiskey now and again. But the thing is that I never got drunk, or, you know, in fact, in my entire life, I've only been drunk 5 times.
Only 5 times? Then you drink whiskeys, you taste whiskeys all the time?
One was completely by accident.
Yeah, okay.
Well, one was on my 21st birthday, and I had my drink spiked, so that was one of them. Another one, I was drinking a really powerful cider, and I didn't realise how powerful it was, and bang, it just hit me. So that's 2. And the other 3 was probably just a little bit of overindulgence. But I don't like the feeling of being drunk. I don't like the feeling of not being in control. And so I drink in moderation. Of course, with my working full-time with whiskey and tasting all of the time, swallowing is not always a good idea. So yeah, whiskey has always been a part of me for the last 50 odd years, and I've always loved it.
So, you are a celebrated author and you have been a journalist. So, we would like to have a peek in your life. When did you start your journalism?
When I was at school, actually. I was.
You had been quite early in all things.
Yeah,
in your life.
I've been writing
Really?
I've been writing a long time.
Really?
And when I was at school, on my early summer holidays, I worked on a farm. I loved the countryside. And then, from the age of about 14 or 15, I spent my summers working in the newspaper office. So I was learning with professional journalists from a very young age. In fact, what happened was that my first ever writing was on cricket. So on a Saturday, I'd go out and report on cricket matches for the local newspaper that in those days, on a Saturday, would cover the sport in the area and would come out on a Saturday night. So during the summer, I did cricket, and during the winter, I did football.
Okay.
And so by the time I was actually 16, I was offered 3 jobs. And I thought I was going to go to university and do all that stuff.
Right.
And a very, very famous football commentator called Brian Moore, who was probably Britain's leading commentator at that time. I was covering a football match at Luton Town for a paper. And after the game, Brian Moore had been covering it for TV. And I met him afterwards. And I told him that I'd been offered 3 jobs. What do I do? And he said, don't even think about sixth form. Don't go to university. He says, leave school now, join a news agency. You'll be working with professional journalists. And by the time you're 21 and thinking of leaving university and looking for a job, you will be working for the top papers or working in TV or what. And at 21, I was working in Fleet Street in the national newspapers. He called it absolutely right.
Wow. That's
so
wonderful.
all this training that you get, but it does not, it is no substitute for actually working on the job, working with genuine professional people. Theorizing is one thing, reality is another thing, and it's the same in whiskey. A lot of people theorize about whiskey. Every day I work with it and I actually understand the reality, which probably makes the Whisky Bible a bit different because, you know, I'm a consultant blender and I'm a long-time writer. So I can marry those two things. So I learnt on the job. In journalism, I learnt on the job in whiskey.
That's wonderful. So when you were covering sports, did you also pursue some sport as yourself?
I actually wanted to be a professional cricketer, actually.
Cricketer?
I wanted to be a
You played
professional
cricket?
I played cricket, yeah.
Wow.
And I gave up about 10, 15 years ago. Too many injuries. I batted. I was learning bat, and I batted for a long time, and I was getting cramp all the time, and it was really painful. And they later discovered that all my tendons were shorter than they should actually be. Now, by that time, I was a champion runner as a kid. You know,
You were an athlete as well.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Doesn't look like it now, but I tell you something. The first time I was ever in a newspaper, it came about, I was, about 13, 14?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd taken part in a cross-country race for my age group, and I'd won it by miles.
Wow.
Right. So the teacher said to me, look, we got the 18-year-olds now starting.
Yeah.
We're two runners short.
Yeah.
You've just won this race. Do you think you can go again and
you did.
and take part in a second race? And I thought, yeah, why not? So I did. So I ran, and having won the first race, I came second in the second race against people about 4 years older than me.
Wow.
And so the local paper picked the story up, and the headline, this was the first time I was ever in a paper, and the headline said, Busy Jim keeps on running. That was the headline. And I've often thought about that because when I'm writing the Whisky Bible, which takes 4 months of tasting for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I mean, 12 hours minimum.
12 hours a day?
Minimum. And it's basically cross country. It's piling on, it's going through that pain barrier and the concentration levels and seeing that goal, that tape at the end. And I think I've always had that competitive, that ability well, cross country and those kinds of sports are a discipline. There's a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it, and you do have to be dedicated.
Okay.
It's the same about whiskey. It's a discipline, and you have to be very dedicated in what you do. Yeah.
So you always excelled to excel.
Yeah, I think so. I'm never satisfied with what I do. I always think I can improve it. So people say, oh, your books are sold in their millions. You must be very happy. And I think, yeah, but maybe I could have done better. I'm never 100%.
So how many books have you written so far?
A lot.
In totality? Yeah, I know, a lot. If you can put a number to it.
I genuinely don't.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
So writing has always been your calling.
It's been my calling.
Guess.
And but the funny thing was, there was a blender for J&B, Jim Milne, and it was he who actually told me that I should publish my tasting notes, because what I'd done is that when I first started writing about whiskey, I was writing about the people, and I was writing about the histories, and because I, as a journalist, I would do stories quite a lot in Scotland. In fact, I was on a massive. I used to specialise in murder cases. Actually, it was pretty.
Writing about murder cases.
Yeah, I did. My speciality was investigations and murder. And one of the most notorious mass murderers came from Scotland, and he came not far from Speyside originally. So I ended up in that part of Scotland, which gave me the perfect opportunity to visit all the distilleries. And it was not unknown to see me back in the 1980s when I'd wrapped up my story and I had nothing else to do. Instead of going back to the hotel, I would disappear to a distillery. And in those days, there was no tourism.
And when was that?
This was in the early 80s. In the early 80s. And I would then work in a distillery.
Wow. Quietly.
And I was being taught how the stills worked, how to turn all kinds of things. So behind the scenes, I was learning. I was absorbing all this stuff. And then, I was doing that instead of going back to the hotel and sitting, around drinking in the bar.
Absolutely.
I was actually in a distillery. And then the next day, of course, I was then back to work and, doing the thing. And then if time was free again, I'd be back up to a distillery. So that it was different in those days. You couldn't do that now.
Yeah.
There isn't even the staff because they've pared down the number of people working in distilleries. But in those days, there was a lot of people. And I just used to go in, hello, Jim. And they would show me how to run the stills, the timing of the stills, and so on and so forth. So I really learnt on the job from amazing people, none of whom are around today because it was so long ago. And this is over 40 years ago. And these people that I learnt from were then very, very experienced people. They were in their 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah. So while doing all this, your journalism and your writing books on sports and stuff, what exactly, made you switch full-time to whiskey writing, or not whiskey writing, towards whiskey, working?
No, you were right, to whiskey writing.
Something that triggered that this is what I really want to, and I should leave this and move on there. A moment, if you can describe it in a moment.
I don't like to do things that other people have already done.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a bit like when you're a cross-country runner. I always used to lead the field.
Yeah.
I tried to burn off the rest. So I wouldn't sit behind a bunch of people and then burst through. I used to head the field and then say, catch me if you can. So I was ahead of the rest.
And I'm sure
and I would just demoralize those behind me and just keep on going. So I like to go into new lands ahead of anyone else. And with whiskey, what became quite clear to me very early on was that there wasn't anyone who actually felt whiskey.
I mean, you had a...
Well, but what I mean by that is there were wine writers who wrote about whiskey.
Yeah.
And there were beer writers who wrote about whiskey, and there were kind of generalized spirit writers, but there were no whiskey writers. And I think to write about whiskey in the way that a wine writer writes about wine, you've got to understand all the nuances. You can't be a wine writer and then be a specialist whiskey writer, because these are two entirely different things. Entirely different.
Yes, it's completely
So
different.
I don't try to write about wine. I know a fair bit about wine, but I won't write about it because I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
There's so much I don't know.
Yeah.
So why should I give people an opinion about something I don't know about?
I mean, leaving a flourishing career with the national newspaper as a journalist,
Yeah.
and you move towards whiskey.
Well, I went from earning a lot of money to nothing overnight, because people who sailed around the world or found a new land and explored it never ever did it without going through pain.
Yes, that's true.
Right. And so therefore I had to create a demand for whiskey writing. It wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
And I literally had I was knocking on doors, I was ringing editors, ringing magazines, and I don't just mean in Britain. Chicago Tribune, the whole works around the world. Do you want anything on whiskey? And I remember one editor or features editor said, "Oh, whiskey, that's one up from meth, isn't it? Why don't you write something on wine?" And I thought, you idiot, you bloody idiot. And so that was a kind of nonsense I was dealing with in those very early days. And I was determined to break this cycle of almost snobbery against whiskey. And so I did. But it was hard. I'm not saying it was easy. It was very, very hard.
And so which was the first distillery that you worked with?
In what way?
Oh, when you started professionally, I would say, because you had been working with learning a lot with different distilleries while you were a journalist. But professionally, the first distillery that attracted your attention and you went there and actually started and
that's different. And so when I was 17, and just started at Northants Press Agency, and it was my first ever holiday. I mean, when I left school, I was on £5 a week. And then after 3 months, it went up to £15 a week.
Wow.
And on that, I ran a car, right? And I saved enough to get a train up to Scotland. And from there, it was the thumb. And I hitchhiked around the north of Scotland.
Yeah.
And I was determined that I was going to find a distillery. And the one I ended up with was Talisker. And although I was 17, I looked a lot older. And so I was allowed in the warehouse.
And you were just 17.
I was 17. And I was allowed in the warehouse. And, they opened a barrel. And I had cast strength Talisker taken by a thief into the glass. And I nosed at it and I tasted it. And I thought, okay, this is my world. It was absolutely an extraordinary moment. It was an epiphany, and it literally changed my life, because from that moment onwards, every single whiskey I ever found, I tasted and I made a little tasting. I didn't give marks out of 100, but I was trying to find out what made whiskies different. So
that was the first day. I mean, you started writing
when I was 17.
Or taking your notes when you were 17.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So
wonderful.
A few years ago now.
Yeah.
I mean, 50 to be precise. So it's exactly 50 years ago. This summer.
50?
50 years ago this summer.
Wow, 50 years ago.
Yeah, this summer marks the anniversary of me going into a warehouse for the first time and tasting whiskey at cast strength exactly 50 years ago.
a golden 50-year journey.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. So wonderful.
And it seems like yesterday. I mean, it really. And you know, honestly, I can still taste it. I can still smell it.
The same. I mean, do you still feel that first sip that you have directly from the cask?
Yes.
Can you still feel it?
I can still taste it, and I can describe it to you. I can describe it to you now. I can describe the aroma of that. And this is the extraordinary thing. These days, if you go to a distillery in Scotland, it's all been made health and safety, and there's pipes taking out gases and this, that, and the other. When you went into a distillery 50 years ago, each department had its own culture from the point of view that it had its own aroma and sound and everything else. That's been lost. You go around the distillery now and the smell is basically the same because of the fact that they're withdrawing the air and so on and so forth. But then it was totally different. If you went from one part of the distillery to another, you knew what you were in just by the aroma.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, which doesn't.
And you started picking up at that
straight away. But the point was that I didn't realise that my nose was that sensitive. I thought everyone else smelled and tasted exactly the same as me. Why should I think that my palate is different to anyone else?
Absolutely.
And I didn't. I thought what I smelled and tasted was exactly the same as everyone else. And you asked me a bit earlier, what was the first distillery that I got involved with? Well, it wasn't actually a distillery; it was a brand.
Okay.
And we're going to go back to Jim Milne again.
Yeah.
Because I became what happened with Jim. So Jim Milne was the blender for J&B, and had been forever. Right? He was. I mean, I say was, sadly, bless his heart, he's no longer with us. And I still miss him to this day. But Jim had an incredibly well-respected nose, and with very good reason. And the first time we ever met was in a hotel. And he was meeting other journalists who weren't whiskey-oriented, but just journalists. And they were trying to get some publicity. And what he did is that he had about 10 sample bottles, and he was going to show the whiskies that went into J&B. So he poured one out, but he didn't tell me what it was. And I picked it up, and I said, "Hang on." I said, "This is Fetacan." I said, "That does not go into J&B. You've got none of these notes in J&B." And he looked at me, and he said, "What?" And he picked up. I swear this is true. He picked up the bottle, he looked at it, he says, "Oh, that is Fetacan. Oh, I picked that up by mistake from the lab." He says, "You're right, it doesn't go in there."
Wow.
He looked at me, he said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because I can smell your whiskey, and I know Fetacan, and I know that Fetacan is not part." And he went, "Wow." And then he tested. I mean, the kind of interview ended at that moment, and he started kind of interviewing me. And he was then testing me with all these whiskies, and we became amazingly good friends. And then he said to me, "Look," he says, "I'm not a great fan on peat. So we do courses at J&B for staff from around the world. Can you come in and give lectures on peated whiskey?" And I said, "Yeah." So I was brought in to train staff up. And talk about.
What age were you then?
I was probably 34, something like that.
So there started your first training programs.
That was my first training program.
Wow.
But so Jim then persuaded me to start publishing my tasting notes, because until that point, until he actually pointed out that I had the nose of a blender. Because he actually said to me, "You got to seriously think about whether you want to be a writer or a blender, because you have the nose of a blender." And I mean, you could have knocked me down with a peacock feather. You really could.
Yeah.
And I was truly shocked, because until that moment, I just thought that my palate was the same as anybody else's.
Yeah. So somebody did tell me that you are blender's blender person. You can train any blender to become the best in the world, and they can produce greatest whiskeys just like you do under your training, under your guidance. So for rightly, they said that
That's
you're
very kind of them.
blender's splendor.
Oh, it's lovely.
So now I know, where from it's coming. So he
Yeah,
did.
yeah, it's an instinct. It's instinct, isn't it? That's why I said earlier, you got to feel the whiskey.
Yes.
I think, I can't change a light bulb. I'm hopeless on so many levels. But if there's a problem with the whiskey, I can usually tell where it's coming from. So I get called in now and again by some companies who don't have a full-time blender, or one who isn't necessarily a blender, but is more of a stock guy, and they have a brand and they can't work out why the brand has changed. And I get called in and I deconstruct it, find the problem, reconstruct it, and so on and so forth. So it's feeling the whiskey, and that's what I try to do with the Whisky Bible. I try to give people that belief
Yeah.
and understanding.
Yeah.
But you've been to my tastings, and you know
Yes.
you know what the Murray method is.
Oh yes.
And I get people to let the whiskey talk to them, rather than them dictating to the whiskey straight away. Let the whiskey talk to them, and then they can dictate to it how they want it.
Right.
But let people find out.
Right.
And that's, as a blender, what I do when I'm blending. I'm looking at a whiskey and I'm thinking, okay, that's going to work with that. That's going to work with that. But no, that's not going to work with that. And it's an instinctive thing, really.
As per you, what makes a whiskey great?
Balance. Right. So what you don't want is a whiskey that's just one dimension. So I stay away from things like PX casks, Pedro Jimenez,
Yeah.
which is very intense.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to get a lot of, what should we say, contrasting flavors and feel on the palate, something like a PX may not necessarily help. It could just fill in where it's going like this.
It's
can
like
just flatten it.
overpowers, or
It can overpower.
it can overpower.
It overpowers.
Okay.
Because when you're adding, you're not just adding, you're also taking away. So something will cover over something else, or it will combine with something else, and you then lose a particular attribute that you already like, because
Yeah.
you put something else in and you've altered it. So when I'm blending, I am very, very cognizant of the effect that certain casks or other whiskies will have on others. And so when I'm analysing
Yeah,
a whiskey for the Whisky Bible, I can tell the whiskies which have been properly blended and are layered, and you can see that they're structured, and a professional person who knows what they're doing has been putting it together, as opposed to a whiskey where there's just a bunch of barrels that someone may own and they've just slung them together. You can tell that. Now, the ones that have balance tend to be the whiskies that are structured, and then you can hit the sweet spot.
Okay.
So you haven't got too much of anything.
Mhm.
You may have this and it's countered by that. You got some of that, it's countered by that. So you're smelling and tasting, and it's telling a story and it's playing along. If it just hits and then nothing happens, it's not working. And so that's what I look for: structure, balance. And that doesn't have to just be a blend. Even if you're creating a single malt, whiskey from one distillery, it's
Okay.
the same principle. Because if
So I
you
would also like you to elaborate a little about, the difference between single malts and a blended whiskey. I mean, as far as I know, single malt is also a blend of few different malts.
a single malt is from one distillery.
One distillery, but different malts.
It can be well, okay, when you say different malts, it could be different ages,
Yes.
and it could be from different barrels.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the same malt, but in different guises.
Okay.
And what you do is that you then put a structure to it so that you get complexity and so on and so forth. A blend, now once upon a time, there used to be the term vatted malt, and everyone knew what it meant. A vatted malt meant it was a malt whiskey, but from more than one distillery. They were vatted together vatted malt.
Okay.
But then the Scotch Whisky Association decided, no, that's not good enough. We're actually going to change that and call it a blended malt. I do whiskey tastings all over the planet,
Yeah.
and people are totally confused between blended Scotch and blended malt. Blended Scotch is a mixture of grain whiskey, which come in column stills,
Mm-hmm.
and malt whiskey. That's blended Scotch. Blended malt is malt whiskey from more than one distillery.
Okay.
And in the Whisky Bible, I still call it vatted malt because the word blend puts into the mind grain whiskey, and it's not there. Whereupon a single malt, one distillery, that's it.
How does the Scotch, bourbon, and rye, they differ in taste?
Very
How?
well.
How can we like differentiate? Is there any particular aroma or a taste or something?
Well, you've got three different things at play.
Yeah.
You got three different grains.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're saying Scotch malt,
Yeah. Yeah.
you got malted barley,
Yeah.
100%. If you're talking bourbon,
Yeah.
you're talking over 50% maize, corn.
Yeah.
And if you're talking rye, then you're talking over 50% rye.
Right.
So, and all those have three very distinctive flavors and very distinctive mouthfeels. They actually feel different in the mouth.
Yeah.
The other thing is with Scotch, you're usually using a cask that's been used before. To be a straight bourbon or straight rye, you're using virgin oak.
Okay.
That's never been used before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So therefore, you're getting a tannin rush,
Okay.
and more sugars as well coming
Right.
out of it.
Right.
So you got two different things at play. You got the type of oak, and you got the type of grain. So that they're all very, very different.
Okay. No, I just meant for the viewers, for who are whiskey lovers, people don't have that kind of deep knowledge.
Right.
So just on the tips, like if they are given three different kind of whiskeys, and one is a Scotch and a bourbon and a rye. So one thing that they can differentiate which one is which, or two, maybe?
No, what they need to do is just understand what they are,
Yeah.
and then just slowly taste them using the Murray method,
Yes.
which is starting off at ambient temperature and then just slowly warming it up in the glass and letting all the different personality of the whiskey escape. Because the moment you add water, you're drowning it and you're losing the character, and also you're never going to get a long finish. And the moment you add ice, you're basically closing the molecules down.
Right.
So you're going to get less. So what you do is that you just study it. You just see what happens, and you will find that with Scotch, it could be bourbon casks that they ex-bourbon casks, could be ex-wine casks, and these will give different flavor profiles, different feel. With bourbon, corn is very oily, so you tend to get this long finish. With rye, much sharper, mouth-watering flavors, a little bit spicier, and the only way you can do it is by taking time and effort to see what the whiskies are in their own right before you start. If people want to add whatever to their whiskey, it's their whiskey, they can do what they want. But all I ask people to do is actually take a little bit of time out and study that whiskey first and learn that way. If they preferred, you live in a very hot country and people sometimes need a long drink, that's fine. But if you're paying good money, and I mean very good money for a whiskey, then it's probably worth sitting down and exploring that whiskey over time.
So there is one whiskey which I really love a lot, Ardbeg.
Right.
And I happen to notice that it has your name on the label.
Okay, well it did, yeah.
Yeah, and I was excited and elated to know when you agreed to be here and give us some time, to be discussing it with you. And what's the story? Did you make it? I'm sure you did. So I would like to know
Well,
a little about this
I
topic.
didn't actually make it as the distiller, but years ago, I used to holiday on Isla. From about I'm not sure the years, but from the very early 1980s,
Mhm.
I used to holiday, and I used to stay in an old cottages that were built for distillery workers, and I used to stay there.
Okay.
And Ardbeg was always closed. The owners didn't know what to do with it. They owned Lefroy, which was multi stilled. They had many stills in Lefroy, whereupon Ardbeg just had the 2 stills. So to run, it was more expensive. It was the better whiskey, in my opinion, and it was also the opinion of the then chairman of Allied, and he contacted me one day and said, "Jim, we got a problem. We've voted to actually knock down Ardbeg because we don't want it to go in other people's hands. And is there anything you can do to save it?" And so I did this campaign I went on TV and radio talking about it and writing in magazines and newspapers all around the world. And no one had ever heard of it, but I began this campaign. And in the end, I was actually in India.
Really?
I was in India, and I was writing a book called Jim Murray's Complete Book of Whiskey. And I was finishing the book. I was down in Goa. I was down at the McDowell's Distillery in Goa. And the head of communications for Glenmorangie contacted me and said, "Can you get back?" And I said, "Why?" They said, "We bought Ardbeg." I said, "Great news, fantastic news. But why do you want me to come back?" And she said, "Because no one here knows anything about it." I said, "What about your blender?" He said, "No, John Smith hates peated whiskey. So he literally can't go anywhere near a barrel.
Right.
So we don't know anyone who knows anything about this distillery." But and I said, "Well, why'd you buy it?" And they said, "Well, because you wouldn't shut up about it." So we sent a team down there. They fell in love with this place, and it is beautiful. I mean, it's just, you've been there.
Yeah,
It is stunning. It is stunning. And they said, "You wouldn't shut up about it." We went down there and thought, wow, this is mind-blowing place. And so we decided to buy it. But so what I'd done is I turned it from I think if I remember correctly, it was a 4-3 vote to actually knock it down, to a 4-3 vote to let it survive and be sold. So I had that victory. And then Glenmorangie didn't have a blender who could handle Ardbeg. So they brought me in as the consultant blender. And I've never in my life been paid for any whiskey that's been sold. I don't take money on sold whiskey, but I do charge by the day as a consultant.
Yeah.
So
of course.
I created some whiskies. I created and recreated certain whiskies for them. So the one, I think, was it the 10-year-old you had? Was it the 10-year-old?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a 10-year-old out when I was around back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
In Ardbeg. But that had a little bit of colouring added and this, that, and the other. I actually recreated the 10-year-old because there was no 10-year-old whiskey.
All right.
So we had to wait a long time. I brought out other whiskies to fill in the gap of the vanished 10-year-old. And then I brought out the 10-year-old, but on a completely different makeup of different type of casks to how it used to be. And I also insisted no colouring.
Yeah.
And at 46%, so they didn't have to chill filter it.
Right.
And it's still that to this day. So that was my baby. I don't get any money. I don't, God knows how many bottles of this stuff they sell. I don't see any of it. I charge them per day. That was the end of it.
Any other particular whiskey, the brand that the blend that you created and
I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go there. There's a lot I've been involved in, but there's a lot I've been involved in where I've trained the blenders.
Yeah.
And I've helped them create something.
Okay.
So I'm not going to start banging my chest and saying, "Oh, I did it."
All right.
That's not me. But yeah, I'm proud of some of the contributions I've made. But it makes no difference for the Whisky Bible. I will taste the whiskey later on, and if they've got it wrong, I'll give it a kicking. It'll get It doesn't matter that they've paid me in the past, or even paying me as a consultant at that time. If they're bringing out a whiskey that isn't right, I will kick them hard because it should be right.
Right.
So I don't settle for.
So how many whiskeys till date have you tasted?
Oh. Honestly,
yeah.
For that book, over 25,000. For the Whisky Bible,
over 25,000.
Over 25,000 just for the Whisky Bible.
Wow.
Actual whiskies in warehouses that I've tasted while blending or quality checking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start. We must be talking, north of 50,000, must be heading towards 100,000 by now.
And so how many do you taste each year when you are doing your Whisky Bible?
Around about 1,000 for the Bible. It used to be a bit more than that, but my time has been kind of crushed a little bit. So I'm doing about 1,000 a year. And
1,000 including the old ones?
Well, I retaste after a time to see if it's moved on.
Altogether 1,000, the old plus the new ones.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And to do that, I've got a home and a lab in Kentucky, which I can't use this year because unfortunately it got flooded when Kentucky. It sits on the Kentucky River. And unfortunately, my place went under 4 feet of water. So
that's sad.
A little bit, and well, very. And I have a place in the UK where I do it, and I have a place in Europe where I do it as well. So I never ever taste a whiskey actually at the distillery.
Okay.
Because then you might be,
carried over.
Yeah, a little bit of romance might come in.
Yeah.
And so when I taste a whiskey, it's always in a controlled environment.
So it's a strict routine and a strict disciplined environment, controlled environment.
Well, you've occasionally spent time with me, and you know how I eat.
Yeah.
So what am I like was, do I love Indian food?
Oh, you love.
I adore Indian food, but when it comes to work.
But you hardly eat Indian food when you are tasting whiskeys. I know that much.
Because so I've been doing some work at some consultancy work somewhere on this trip, and my main food was rice and cashew nuts.
Rice and cashew.
Really? That was my main meal. That was
God.
my main meal every single day.
I mean, working hard all day long and then even not a good flavorful food. I mean, that's so boring and that's so.
If there's a Guinness Book of Records for eating the most boring food most often,
that's what
I must win it. But it's that discipline I'm telling you about. You have to go through that pain to to get to the end of it.
Yeah.
So, that's what
it's so difficult. I can understand people go on diet and they are not able to follow it just because, if they are not able to have their routine food, what they love to eat, it becomes boring and it becomes very hard for them and they drop it. It's
very frustrating. But it has to be done. It's a little bit like a jockey.
Yeah.
When a jockey's riding a horse, he can't eat. He has to keep his weight. So, when if you're at a race event and the horses are going past, you can hear two things. You can hear the horses, they're grunting and their hooves, and you can hear the rumbling of the stomachs of the jockeys. They are starving hungry, right?
Right.
And it's kind of similar for me from the point of view that I'm dying to eat something that's got flavour, but I can't do it because spices and what have you will affect my taste buds, and I have to be absolutely 100% confident that what I'm analysing correctly. So if people are paying me as a consultant, I'm not shortchanging them. I'm giving them an accurate thing.
Right,
and if people are buying my book, then I haven't shortchanged them on that either. The whiskey that I've tasted has been analysed properly. And another thing, if I give a whiskey a low grade,
Yeah.
it can damage the reputation of that whiskey.
Yeah. Of course.
On the other hand, if I give it a high grade, it can do a lot of good. So there's responsibility with that. So therefore, I'm super responsible about how I treat every single whiskey. So I treat them all exactly the same. They're all tasted in exactly the same conditions, with my taste buds being in the same neutral mode.
Right.
So that there's, it's not done it's done in controlled environment. It's not done in a kitchen, or it's not done where the dog's been or whatever.
Yeah.
It's completely controlled,
Yeah.
because I have to be totally fair on that.
Fair enough. So after tasting so many whiskeys, when you do for your Whisky Bible, how do you again, and eating such bland food, how do you again reset your palate?
When I finish the Whisky Bible, the first thing, and if I'm in the UK, the first thing I do, I will go to an Indian restaurant.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I'll
be happy to hear that.
I will have a chicken biryani.
Jim loves Indian food.
I adore Indian food. I will have a chicken biryani.
Oh, wow. That's your favorite Indian food?
I adore it. Well, if it's done by the right restaurant.
Of course.
I'm a bit choosy, but if it's done right, I absolutely love it, yeah.
Can we can we learn something from you, like tasting whiskey here? Can you show us the famous Murray method?
I can show you the Murray method, of course.
Perfect.
If you want me, but we need the right glasses.
So Jim, before we dive into the tasting, the Murray method tasting, I would like one more question. Does an aged whiskey always has to taste better than a young whiskey? That's the general perception.
No. Age can depend on a number of things. So really, it's the interaction between the cask and the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So you can put the spirit into a cask, and you can put it in one part of the warehouse, and you can put the next barrel in another part. So you put one at the top,
okay,
and you put one at the bottom. Same age whiskey, but leave it for 10 years. One will be very dark. After 10 years, one will be very light. The aromas will be very different. The taste will be very different. Same age, exactly the same age. So which is the better? Well, it's a matter of taste. Some people prefer something that's been at the top, that's got more oak. Others will prefer those that have been at the bottom, and you can taste the grain better. So age is a bit of a weird thing, really, which is why there's a law's just been passed here in India.
Yeah.
Where to be called a single malt whiskey, it has to be 3 years old.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Isn't it?
It's insane.
And why so?
If certain markets demand that for you to export to that market, it's got to be 3 years old. Fine, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, you're complying with a law.
Right.
However, in India, it's hot. It's not Scotland.
Yes, of course.
Right? Now, they changed or they created the law at the turn of the last century because of the fact that there was spurious spirits that weren't actually really whiskey. And there was also a big argument about, does it need to be aged? So they decided that it was going to be 3 years old. And 3 years old in Scotland is not 3 years old in India.
Okay.
Right? It's very different. Scotland is cold. Generally speaking, by Indian standards, Scotland is cold. So 3 years maturation in Scotland is not 3 years maturation here.
Mm-hmm.
So what they should have done is said, okay, fine, the whiskey that we're going to export is going to be 3 years old. But for the home market, it should have been much less, because you can get great Indian whiskey from 9-10 months, whatever.
Really?
Yeah, depending on which part of the warehouse. I mean, the first time I came to India 30 odd years ago, I tasted, well, there was no control over the casks.
Mm-hmm.
So quality was all over the place. And I tasted the oldest maturing whiskey. It was 6 years old. It was undrinkable. It was undrinkable. Now you can drink 15-year-old Indian like that. But equally, whiskey in India can be honeyed and gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, from 10 months, 15 months, 2 years and 10 months, whatever, depending on the type of cask and where in the warehouse it's been. So the blenders of India have now had their arms bound, and they can't create whiskies for this market, which reflects the wide range of whiskies. It's absolute insanity. I mean, I really hope.
So probably a young whiskey in India, matured in India, would taste better.
Well, providing
than a 3-year-old?
well, providing it's been well made and it's been put in a good cut. Look, if you make a great whiskey, a great spirit, and put it into a poor cask, you're going to get crap whiskey.
Right.
Simple as that, right? Doesn't matter how good you make the whiskey. Put it into a bad barrel, bad whiskey. You make a okay whiskey, put it into a great barrel, you'll get pretty good whiskey.
Right.
So the barrel has a lot of say. But I really hope that the industry, which is pretty a fledgling industry, rethink this one, because for the home market, they're really shooting themselves in the foot. Because another thing, of course, is that here in India, what they call the angel share, the amount that you lose into the atmosphere,
Right.
is way higher than in Scotland.
Okay.
So by leaving it 3 years, you're costing the distillers a huge amount of money, a huge amount.
So maybe
because they're losing it.
it would taste like a far more aged Scottish whiskey and 3-year-old.
Absolutely. I mean, I could show you a 20-year-old Scotch and a 3-year-old Indian, or even less than 3. You know, say 2 years and 9 months.
Oh.
And you'd barely be able to tell the difference between them. The thing you would be able to tell is that being matured over 20 years, the integration between the tannins out the oak and the grain itself is going to be softer. It's going to be less harsh. When you've matured more, you know, at a greater speed, the tannins are just going to hit you that little bit more. But against that, some of the spirit made in this country is now so good, it's so brilliantly made, that you don't necessarily get that blast like you used to.
Okay.
So there's much more integration, there's much more complexity, and you can always tell, because if you're getting honey notes, something has gone very, very right. And you can get honey in Indian whiskey from the age of I've tasted it from the age of about 10 months.
So we cannot control the notes of a whiskey while we are creating the blend or distilling the blend. I mean, we sometimes do add peat during the process to make it a peaty whiskey, or we mature it in an Islay cask or something, you know, so that it takes on the hint of...
It takes on that smoke that's inherent.
So, and if we want to create a whiskey which is like fruity and more fragrant and spice notes, so, I mean, do we create it, or can we control it, or we just wait for it to be sitting in the cask,
no.
unveiling itself? The
secret of making great whiskey is control.
Okay.
You have to control every single aspect of the process, and this is where Indian whiskey's made the greatest leaps over the last decade or so.
Interesting.
Because they've managed to learn how to control it, and I like to feel that I've played a little part in that myself, because I've done a lot of work with a lot of people in that process, and that's why when that law was passed in March, I literally thought it was a joke. I thought someone was actually playing a joke on me. Seriously, I thought no one can be that insane to actually shoot your own market in the foot, and I really hope that this is reconsidered. 3 years, yes, for foreign, but you can make fantastic whiskey in India at under 3 years old. It doesn't have to be that, because you can put you can have whiskey that's 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and then blend it with stuff that's younger, and you layer the flavors.
Right.
But you can't do that if it's got to be, well, you can do it, but you're going to lose certain attributes if it's got to be 3 years and over. So the key for a blender is to have the maximum amount of choice.
Oh.
And the moment that you start putting that kind of restriction, you are reducing that choice dramatically. So I'm gonna do. I probably can't do anything, but while I can breathe.
Right things have to be done at the right moment, like we are cooking up something, if it's later or earlier, it can spoil. Similarly, like as you say, the layering and everything has to be at a certain point of time. And
it doesn't have to be at a certain point, but it helps. And do you remember what I told you about? You have to understand the whiskey.
Yes.
Well, that's what comes into play. It's understanding how one whiskey is going to work with another.
Okay.
And so it goes abroad and it's all 3 years old. It keeps certain other countries happy. But there's 1.5 billion people in this part of the world. Yeah. And you've just lost that. the ability to do that for those who are whiskey drinkers. So there's something not right about that.
Okay.
But I think that's something that's got to be seriously re-examined, to be honest.
Okay. So let's dive into the.
Okay. So we're in a bar.
We are in a bar.
We're in a bar, and when people go into bars, it's very rarely that they use a spittoon, right? But we're going to do that.
All right.
Because I want to finish this interview with you making sense.
Great. Let's make some.
And me sitting here looking at one of you and not three of you. Okay.
Perfect.
So we're gonna.
In mind.
So we're gonna spit, and also because, well, this is what I do because I taste a lot of whiskey, so I'm very careful with how much I'm
excited to do it with you.
Now, when people go into a bar, they just order a whiskey, whatever they fancy, and it comes in a glass.
Yeah.
But the type of glass can be pretty important.
And it does matter.
Okay. Well,
because I can see.
I'm gonna put you to the test.
Something like this. I mean, I do not exactly had in a bar the proper tasting glasses, but normally what people do, and at home or in a bar, we always serve whiskey in a flat bottom, wide glass.
Yeah, and
this is like
they're straight
up. Yeah.
So what I want you to do is just pick this one up, right, and use the Murray method of just bringing it under the nose and timing your breathing in.
Okay.
With it coming to your nose, and then as you breathe out, you move it away. So you don't really move your arm, you just move your hand. So you're doing this. Okay? Now when you nose that, you can pick up the aroma. You kept it a bit too long there. I'm watching carefully. Right?
Okay.
But then the thing you don't want to do is that you don't want to either.
Right.
If you stick your nose in, you're going to snort alcohol.
Okay.
And you keep your head straight, and if you use your diaphragm, you're going to sniff in alcohol.
All right.
So I just want you breathing normally. So you just do this. Now using your arm, just keep your arm against your body, and just use your wrist. Now you nose that there's no alcohol, or very little. There's a little bit, but next to nothing. Now let's try the same trick with this. Okay. Hands underneath, like that. Same trick. And I'm getting an alcohol bite straight away.
Yes.
Right?
Not too much fragrance.
There's not too much fragrance, but there's definitely a little bit of nip.
Absolutely.
And the reason for that is that this has got, although it's shaped, like a brandy snifter.
Yeah.
The fact is that this is too wide at the top. Okay. So it's allowing the alcohol to escape. This is smaller and less flash looking. It's still not the type I would use in a lab.
Right.
But if I was in a bar, I would use this one because it's keeping. This is less wide
The
than that.
smaller the diameter, you can.
It helps.
It
you're,
helps.
you're getting less. It's capturing
Okay.
the alcohol and letting it stay down there rather than it just rise off.
Okay.
So you
So
saw.
we learned something new today.
So well, the other thing you notice straight away that this is further from the nose. So you're actually going to find it harder to get the aroma.
Right.
This is actually slightly closer.
Right.
So you get less alcohol
Okay.
and more actual aroma of whiskey. And you can actually pick the whiskey up on that.
Yeah.
So it's quite sweet and
Yeah.
friendly and a little bit oily. Correct?
Right. Oily.
But the moment you
sweet,
do
and
this,
it's fruit.
you're struggling to pick up the character of the whiskey. But you can pick up the alcohol. You get the
Yes,
burn.
and mind you, they are the same whiskey in the glasses.
It's the same whiskey in the glass.
And I can hardly,
But you're
pick
getting
anything
nothing.
or any fragrance.
There, you can actually pick up the personality of the whiskey.
Right,
Here you get nothing.
Nothing. Really, right.
So when people go into a bar, it's important they select the right glass. If they really, look, if you go into a bar and you want to get hammered with your friends, fine, do that. That's you've gone out for a good night. But if you are paying, above the odds for a high class whiskey, and it's in that bar, and you think, oh, I've always wanted to try that, and you finally try it, make sure you pick the right glass, or you look at the glasses that are available, and you say to the waiter, can I have it in one of those glasses, please? So just things like this is a way of easily improving your enjoyment of a whiskey if you're paying a lot of money for it.
That's wonderful tip that we have got.
There you go.
I mean, I would always remember now never to use the wide glasses, as we normally do.
Yes.
But these are perfect because I could see the difference. I could hardly sniff anything here.
Exactly.
No fragrance.
Exactly.
Red, just a
And also, we hadn't rehearsed that, folks.
yeah, of course.
We hadn't rehearsed that at all. That it was poured, it was put in front of us,
Exactly.
and
Whiskey.
we've just done that.
Yeah.
So that's a genuine response. So when it comes to the actual tasting,
Okay.
you carry on nosing. Now, we would have eaten something during the course of today, even though I don't eat anything that tastes of anything. I did have some fruit earlier,
Yeah.
which is sweet.
Yeah.
By and large, fruit is sweet.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is you've got to get rid of all the sugars in your palate.
So that was in the morning, and it's like
Still be there.
afternoon. Still be there.
And a lot
Wow.
of people smoke or whatever, or they've eaten some food or had a tea or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Something has gone in their mouths, and the general environment in their mouths will include sugars. So we've got to get rid of that, because what we're looking for is the sweetness within the whiskey. If you can't find the sweetness in the whiskey, you can't find the balance.
Oh.
So what you do is very, very simple. I'm not saying people should spit out, especially but I'm going to anyway.
Yeah, and
So-
today we are doing it the right way. Your
Today
way.
we're going to do it. We're going to do it the professional way.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you nose 3 times, but even on this one, the very, very first one, you don't take any notice. You're cleansing your palate. So
Okay.
I would just do this. And it's quite bitter. It's bitter because it's fighting against the sugars in this
Right.
have been outnumbered by the sugars that's already on your palate. So it's bitter.
Yeah, it's bitter.
So every whiskey that you ever have, the worst one you will have in the day will be the first one. So never take any notice of your first whiskey.
Okay.
Never judge a whiskey on the first taste.
Okay.
Always from the second onwards. So when you nose it now, and you'll notice I'm not doing this
Yeah.
because it's not wine,
Yeah.
it's a spirit.
Yeah. Normally we tend to swirl our
Yeah.
drink.
So being a spirit, it's got to be a minimum 40% alcohol by volume.
Yes.
Wine is what? 12,
12.
14.
14. Yeah.
So you swirl a wine to kick up the bouquet. And the alcohol's not going to hurt you. When
Right.
you're at 40%, it does. So you keep the alcohol where it is and you don't swirl, right? So you bring it in Have you noticed it's more spicy now? As it warms up in the hand.
Yes.
Oh, you're not holding it right. So get your
Okay.
get
we have
get
to
your
hold it like
yeah.
that.
You've got to get that
Okay.
because if you're holding it like this, you're slowly warming the whiskey,
Okay.
and as you warm the whiskey, it will change in character
Oh,
because you're releasing more molecules.
really?
Because when it's cooler, the molecules have contracted.
Yes, yes.
As you warm it, you're actually changing the surface tension. You're opening it up, and molecules escape that you couldn't previously smell or taste.
Okay.
So
do it.
as you warm it, especially under these arc lights, you can now get a little bit of spice coming through that wasn't there when we first nosed it. A little bit of cinnamon, in fact. No, you're sniffing too long. So
I like the sniff of it.
yeah, but can you pick up the cinnamon?
Yeah, I can pick up some spice.
So I'm trying not to be auto-suggestive here, but there's definitely cinnamon on this.
Yeah.
And then when you finally taste properly, what you do is this. One spit. Head back, chew it. Now you get the sweetness, which wasn't there when you first tasted it. And it's long
Yes, and it's very long.
because we've not added water. When you add water,
Yeah.
you break up the oils. When you just taste it like this, the oils will stick to the roof of the mouth and you get a longer finish. So when I use a whiskey, first of all, at cask strength, and then I blend it down to, but not below, the strength I'm going to bottle it at.
And now there is no bitterness. It's
There's
just
none. There's none.
slight sweet and, covering all mouth inside.
And there's
flavors.
a little bit of dryness on the finish.
Yes,
And that's
on the upper part.
that's the vanilla from the cask.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And there's no aggression. There's
Not
no
at all.
bite.
No harshness, no
There's no harshness.
emotion.
Because what we've done is that both under the lights anyway, and then by holding it, we've warmed it. We've allowed those molecules to come out. And as I said, you change, this is really important, you change the surface tension. When something's cold, it locks.
Yeah.
And it's literally hard.
Okay.
And so it goes onto your palate and it hits your palate. When you warm it, the molecules are moving apart and it becomes soft. It's pliable. So when it actually goes onto your mouth, it's not hitting your mouth.
All right.
It actually caresses it and coats it.
Wow.
It's a completely different feel.
I mean, I could never think that whiskey can taste so flavorful. I mean, in this manner, and the harshness is not there at all.
Okay, we're in a warm environment here,
Yeah.
right? And so this has already started off relatively relaxed. This is a very relaxed whiskey. When it's cold,
Yeah.
the molecules clinch. They go together, they hug,
Yeah.
and they become very hard.
Yeah.
They go onto your palate and they hit it.
Okay.
So what we're doing is that we are warming it. Just by holding it like this, our body temperature
Yeah.
is slowly changing both the feel of the whiskey and the aroma and taste of the whiskey, second by second by second.
Okay.
Because as each second passes, the molecules are slowly moving apart, and it allows other molecules that were trapped to come through. There's the aroma, there's the taste, right? But the mouthfeel, you noticed the mouthfeel was very soft.
Yeah.
Because the surface tension is now like that. And instead of hitting you, it's caressing you.
Right.
So that's why, you tasted it at full strength. You weren't choking on it.
Right.
You found it very friendly.
Absolutely.
But I guarantee you, if we'd put this whiskey in the fridge and we had it cold, you would find it very hard. And the other thing is that the sugars will take a long time coming forward because they tend to be held tight.
Because some people do say that you add a little water to open up the whiskey. So I feel
So this whiskey is 40% alcohol,
yeah,
and you add water.
few drops.
Yeah, but if you add water, what have you got?
Okay.
Well, it's not whiskey. Don't you drop below 40, you're no longer whiskey, are you?
Right.
But the other thing is, you don't need to do that because you are opening it up.
Right.
This will open it up far more than a drop of water.
Okay.
And when you add the water, you are then breaking those oils up, which give you the long finish. So the more water you add, the shorter the finish.
Okay.
So basically, again, you're destroying your whiskey. So no, don't add water.
No.
Just don't. You don't need to.
Just learned it.
Just do this, because that's
So do not add water to your whiskey. If you really enjoy whiskey drinking and you want to taste the full flavors of your whiskey, just do it like this.
Exactly.
As Jim says.
Exactly. And again, if you want to put coconut oil, Coke, whatever, that's entirely up to you. You've paid for it. Do what you want. But if you are buying a whiskey to discover what that whiskey is all about, then you do this.
Great. I'm always fascinated by the color and the swirls and the liquid. I mean, it's so sensual. Do you also find whiskey sometimes sensual or sexy?
When it's a very, very good whiskey, absolutely. And you do too.
Absolutely. I mean,
well, think about it.
yeah,
It's affecting your senses.
correct.
Taste, smell, touch.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is what all the senses are alive. That's why. Even the food does the same.
Then how can it not be sexy?
Absolutely.
If it's good.
If it's good,
good
of course.
and complex. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
It's a sexy whiskey.
Just sexy whiskeys. Yeah.
I'll even swallow that one.
So before we move forward, I want to know, why do you always wear this hat?
Oh, the hat.
The hat.
Okay. So once upon a time, I used to wear kind of hair gel because I've always had kind of prog rock hair.
Yeah. You are a rock star.
And I can't now find one that doesn't have an aroma. They used to make it without an aroma, but not anymore. So I've always worn hats anyway. In fact, on the one time I got married, I actually got married in a hat very similar to this, which was back in 1986. So I've always worn things like this anyway. But the reason I wear a hat is that so that when I'm actually tasting a whiskey, the hair goes in, the hat goes over. So when I'm nosing, I don't have any hair touching my nose, coming down and flickering and taking my mind off what I'm doing. So it totally helps me to completely concentrate, because as you get older, of course, not for you, of course, but for us guys,
Even for you.
the hair's thin somewhat. So
You're aging as whiskey does.
badly. I'm the kind of guy.
Beautiful by the age.
I'm the kind of guy you find at the top of a warehouse. Yeah. So so I don't want any distractions. So believe it or not, when I am having a shower or go to sleep, I don't wear this hat. And but people, if I do a photo shoot, people want me to wear the hat, because it's a kind of a recognizable thing. So it's become a kind of a trademark. It's become a trademark. That
Right.
wasn't exactly intended like that, but that's what's happened.
So now we know it just isn't a trademark. It just doesn't add a character to the whiskey man himself. It is required for him to be accurately tasting his whiskeys.
I've got to be honest, that this one here is my reserve one, because I'm in India during the monsoon season. Now, a genuine Panama, the one that you will see on the on the cover of my book here and what have you.
Yeah.
That one there is a genuine Panama. It takes one person about 4 months to make that. And if I want to replace it, it will cost me north of £3,000
Wow.
for one hat.
Wow.
And the one that I've had for about 12 years. And they're so well made that even after 12 years, it's in perfect condition. But it wouldn't be in perfect condition if I was out in the monsoon and it got soaked.
Yeah.
So this is my way cheaper backup hat. And if India wants to throw its entire monsoon at me, it can do so, and I don't mind. It's not going to, it may ruin it, but I can get another one. But it's still, when I'm working in a lab or doing a show or working on the book, it will do the right job. It keeps my hair out the eyes, and I concentrate on what that whiskey is telling me, right? So when you're having a conversation, you don't want to keep being interrupted because you lose the flow.
Right.
It's the same with the whiskey. When a whiskey's talking to me,
Yeah.
I don't, people aren't allowed into my lab. I don't have any distractions, so that I concentrate on what that whiskey is doing. Because when you're nosing and tasting whiskey, you're looking for what's wrong with it. And you could miss the clue where there's a problem by being distracted. So I don't want to be distracted. And so I don't want to miss that clue. So I wear the hat.
So whiskey was introduced to us by Britishers around, I guess, 150 or 200 years ago. So since then, a Britisher set up a distillery here in India, and from there on, the legacy went over to the Indians themselves and carried forward till date. How do you think that we have taken the legacy forward to what it is, now?
Well, to be slightly more correct, I'm afraid that they established the distillery in what is now Pakistan, a place called Murree, Murree.
Was it? It wasn't Solon.
No, that wasn't the first. As far as my research tells me, Murree was the first. And they built a brewery there.
Murree.
Solon was.
So is it a coincidence that I'm talking to a Murree?
It's spelled a different way.
Yeah.
Solon was very, very, very early.
Okay.
And if you go there, you can tell, because it's not done with bells and whistles like you get today.
Yeah.
It's all done gravity fed. So the first process starts at the top, the last process starts at the bottom. So it's all done by gravity. And if you go to old distilleries or say breweries in Britain, you find the old breweries. They're called tower breweries because the first process starts up there. There was no electricity in those days.
Right.
There was no pumps, so it was easier for it then to work down by gravity. So Solon, but it's kind of contemporary with Murree. But by the time I got to Solon back in the mid 90s,
right,
it was a little bit past it wasn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason was it was making, or could have made, great whiskey, but what actually happened was that the demand on the stills was such that they were told that they had to produce more from the same materials.
Okay.
And you do that by extending the cut. So when you're making a really good whiskey, you don't want the first part that runs off. You don't want the last part. You want the heart. You want that middle bit.
Middle way.
And what happened at Solon over time was that it was suffering from an inflamed heart. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. So by the time I got there in the mid 90s, it was a very fainty whiskey. In other words, you could smell the cuts that should have been taken off, but actually in the whiskey. And I remember there was this lovely gentleman. The first time I went there, it was winter. There was still snow up there, and it was freezing cold. It really was cold because you're relatively high up.
Yeah.
And The guy poured me his solemn whiskey. He'd been distillery manager there for many, many years. And he lamented the fact that it didn't taste like it did when he was first there.
Right.
And they explained to me that the demand was such that they had to extend it a bit. So they cooked me in this old British, colonial building, the most superb roast chicken dinner
Wow.
I've ever had outside Britain to this day. Never had anything outside Britain that good. It was perfection. And they cooked me this amazing meal. But before the meal started, I got some of his whiskey and I poured it into a glass. And they, being a colonial building up in the hills with the snow outside, there was a log fire going, just as there had been when they first built the building. And I put the whiskey in front of the log fire, really close to it.
Right.
We had our meal, and I swear to you, I'm not making it. This really didn't happen. And after the meal, I said to this lovely gentleman, I said, I've got a surprise for you. And he was a bit, didn't know what I was talking about. So I went back into the living room. Log fire was still going. That glass was still there. And I picked it up and I nosed it. Right. And I brought it back in and I asked him to have a black coffee, clear his palate. He had the black coffee. And then I presented him with this whiskey. And I absolutely swear to you, he grabbed hold of it like this and he went, and his eyes opened in shock. And he didn't speak English. And he said, "This is my whiskey." And, an interpreter was telling me this. And he tasted it and he said, "But this is how my whiskey used to be." And how have you done this? And basically what I did is I put it in front of the fire and I was burning off those excess oils. I didn't get them all out, obviously.
Oh, okay.
But I got off the worst of it. And I cleaned it up sufficiently that he recognized it as the whiskey that it used to be. And it was beautiful.
Wow.
It was really, really good. And by burning it off, we'd refound the honey again.
Yeah.
We'd refound the honey rather than those kind of bittery, oily notes that was going on.
So coming back to how are we taking the legacy forward and the today's scenario in India, how is the whiskey industry grown up and evolved and matured?
Well, you've got to remember that whiskey was made to be drunk. So in the old days, when they made it, they didn't bother about shoving it in casks for a long, long time. They drank it.
Yeah.
It wasn't done as a business. Well, it was a business, but it had to be got to the soldiers, and they drank it. So it was a malt spirit that probably barely got past 6 months, most likely. So to make it into a commercial product, you have to mature it. So they have to make it into a commercial product. And in the old days, they didn't know how to handle the barrels. What kind of barrels would do what. What I've seen in my time here is the growth of the understanding of how whiskey can be not only made, which is a big part, but also matured, which is also a big part. And so the legacy is, it's now been embraced. And I think it's time that the Indian people embraced it a bit better. Because the funny thing about people from their own country is that they automatically think that a whiskey is going to be inferior to something else. That isn't necessarily the case. That is not necessarily the case. And so there's now enough whiskies in India for people to really take pride in what's going on. And that is the legacy. The legacy is building upon what's already been achieved and making it better and better and better. I don't know a single Indian distiller who wants their rivals to make a bad whiskey. They want their rivals to make a good whiskey, because if someone has a bad Indian whiskey, that may put them off having Indian whiskey again.
Right.
So they want their rivals to be good, just not as good in the marketplace, but they want the quality to be good.
Absolutely.
So that people's perception is not, dragged down.
Right. You have been instrumental in putting up the Indian whiskies like Amrut and Paul John on the global map, and the other Asian whiskies like from Yamazaki from Japan. So I would like to know your story or thoughts about it. I think that has helped a lot for us Indians to make our whiskey reach the whole world and to make a mark that, yes, we can also do a good job with the whiskey.
Well,
and you have been instrumental in getting this to that.
It's very nice for you to say that. But you know me reasonably well. Would you agree with that? I mean, we've known each other a little while.
Yes, of course.
And when you see me, do I ever act any differently to one, someone who's a barman to someone who's the owner of a distillery? Do I act any different between those two people?
No, you treat everybody the same.
I treat everybody exactly
the same.
Do I treat women the same as men?
No, exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah.
If they're younger, do I patronize them or do I talk to them as if they're...
No, you're always courteous and respectful.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. But what the point is that I treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
And I do exactly the same with whiskey.
Right.
All because it comes from a particular country. I'm not going to look down my nose at it. You have to look at the actual quality that's there, not where it comes from. And that's upset a few people, I will tell you here and now, especially in the more established industry, because they all automatically assume that they're better, but they're not. And you may have a distillery that goes back to the 1830s, you may have this, that doesn't mean to say you're making good whiskey now. So you don't just go by the name and reputation, you go by what's in the bottle. And so I judge everything that comes out of the bottle. It's one of the reasons I don't add water. I'm judging what's in that bottle. So when I judge an Indian whiskey, when I judge a Taiwanese whiskey, a Japanese whiskey, it doesn't matter. I'm looking for those faults, but no matter where it comes from, whether it's Scotland, America, you look for what's wrong with it, then you look for what's right with it. So the Whisky Bible, when it came out, and it upset a lot of people because I was putting Scotch whiskey and scoring it on the same kind of score scale as whiskies from other parts of the world. And they said, but you can't do that. So I treat everything as an equal. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's great whiskey, it's great whiskey. If it's bad whiskey, it's bad whiskey.
You think we are already ready to stamp the world with our whiskeys?
Well, yeah, it is getting increasingly better.
Yeah, that's what I was coming to. And I guess, believing your trips to India and teaching us, training us to do better and better, that's going to always make a difference, a big difference to our whiskeys.
I think
making their mark.
Because I've got to say that the desire of the distillers to make great whiskey is truly, truly mind-blowing and very humbling, actually, in many ways.
Yes.
And people want to learn. There's less arrogance here than other places. Distilleries that have been making good whiskey and they don't really realize that they're making good whiskey. They don't embrace just how good it is. So it's sometimes fun to explain to people, look, guys, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you do this, we could actually make this a bit better. So I do try to help companies because at the end of the day, I want people who go in, into bars or a liquor store and buy a whiskey. I want them to buy the best whiskey that they possibly can. And if I can help in any way, then that's an honor for me. It really is. And India is definitely going up in a way. In the next Whisky Bible, there actually will be a Indian chapter because Indian whiskey has now reached that zenith where it deserves its own recognition.
No, I agree completely with you. And I feel that there is, in our liquor industry, we need something here, somebody or something, some kind of course that can help our blenders and the industry people to amp up their product, to make it better and reach more people outside India.
I think, it's great making great whiskey, but if the people who serve it don't necessarily understand what it is, that's not going to help. So You see, there's two kinds of training, isn't it? There's the training done by people who are teaching you how to sell it,
Yeah.
and there are those who train you, who teach you how to actually appreciate it and point out to people what it is about that whiskey,
Exactly.
which isn't
completely
selling
agree.
it.
Yes.
Which isn't selling it.
Right.
You're actually educating people.
That's required.
But too many times people will try to educate you in the way that's going to make the maximum profit, which isn't necessarily helpful.
Right.
So I think that balance has to be got right. I don't have enough days in the year to train people. If I could train 100 people at a time and do that, then I'd find some time to do that.
Mhm.
But at the moment, you know, I couldn't just go to a bar and train 3 people. That just doesn't work.
Traveling around so many places all across the world, and India is coming up so well with its whiskies, and India remains a majorly whiskey drinking population.
Yeah.
Do you think, and you have been coming to India and observing the Indians since years, do you think we are ready to embrace other liquors, other spirits now?
Yeah, providing they're good. I mean, there's great rum out there,
Okay.
but my focus is at people learning on whiskey.
And we love whiskey.
And getting the right kind of whiskey. I mean, I'm a consultant rum blender as well, but I only do super high end stuff. I don't have time to do anything else. So I'll be going over to Guyana or Jamaica or whatever. It's got to be super high quality. What I want to do is get people, before they start moving to other stuff, I want them to actually understand whiskey first. That's my purpose in life. Get people understanding about whiskey.
So what's your favorite whiskey, if I may ask, or what style of whiskey, if not particular? So what kind of whiskey do you like to drink?
Well, to me, it doesn't matter the style as long as it's high quality. I think that the best whiskey in the world at the moment is made in Kentucky.
Okay.
I mean, the Buffalo Trace Distillery for me is the best distillery in the world. The best malt whiskey in the world, I think, is made by Glen Grant in Scotland. I mean, it's just it wins awards in the Whisky Bible. It used to be Ardbeg for me, but I really think that Glen Grant, its consistency has just been so breathtaking. But I don't say, right, okay, I'm going to go home and have this. It's a mood thing.
Tell me a whiskey which still excites you.
Loads. I mean, there are.
Which one is the top of the list?
Okay.
Or a few?
Okay, the whiskey that excites me most is the whiskey I've never tasted before and discovered, and it's brilliant. That excites me.
Okay.
Because you're.
But I think you have tasted almost everything on this planet, isn't it?
There's surprises. There may be a surprise coming up. I'm saying nothing.
Really?
I'm saying nothing, but there might be a surprise or two coming up. And you know, the first book I ever did, no, it wasn't the first book actually, but the first big book I did was called Jim Morrow's Complete Book of Whiskey. And that came out in 1997. And I went round to every distillery that was working that I could find. There was no internet in those days. So actually tracking down those distilleries was hard work, right? Really hard work. Then I had to get out to them.
Okay.
So I went all over the world and I wrote this book. Now it couldn't be written because there's so many distilleries in the world that if I went to a distillery every day, I still wouldn't be able to get the book out. There's too many.
Okay.
There's too many in Europe, there's too many in America. So that book can never be written again, not in the way that I did it, because I wrote it also as a kind of a travel piece as well. So I was talking about the entire area and the people and everything.
Okay.
And to do that today now. But then I was discovering new whiskies, and you're always looking for that lost tribe.
So you're still out on the exploration trip to find out more and more newer whiskies.
So what happens is that you read occasionally that they found a new tribe in the Amazon forest, or there's one been found in New Guinea or wherever, right?
We would wait for that.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm looking for those whiskies that have somehow gone under the radar. And you think, wow, what have I just found here? So I may have just done that, who knows?
No.
Who knows? It may have just.
We are
it may-
waiting.
It may not.
We are
But-
waiting
but-
for you to unveil more and more surprises in the whiskey world.
But the point
We're
is,
always waiting for you.
you've got to keep looking.
Absolutely.
And never just sit still and say, oh, that's what it is. And if things aren't quite right, if you can help, do something to help as well. So yeah, if there's a whiskey which hasn't been good for a while, and then I taste it, and they've rediscovered that magic touch, that really gets me. And you're thinking, yes, great, that they're back again.
Wow.
I'm turned on by whiskey in many different ways. I'm also turned off by Me Too whiskies, and we're doing it in that cast finish and that. Wake me up, guys. Because often the cast finishes aren't very good because they're using not very good casks, and they've just spent a lot of money on it, and they've got to bottle it, and it may not be at its best. So what I do is I ask distillers to concentrate on making sure that their distillate is high quality and that their main brand is representative of the best that they make. Then start mucking around with cast finishes and variants, but make sure that your actual core whiskey is the best it can be.
This is your 20th edition,
Right.
and we'll be waiting for the next one to come.
Yeah.
I am hoping that we'll have the honor to have you again
You will.
with your new edition.
You will. I apologise to those who waited for the 2025. Unfortunately, there was a lot of illnesses involved within my company. And then later with me as well. I was unwell for a while. And although I tasted all the whiskies, we didn't get the book out for the first time since it first came out in 2024, because it's so labour intensive and so difficult to get that out. But there will be a 25/26, and that's going to happen, and it's going to have the Indian section in it for the very first time.
That would be just wonderful.
It'll be. I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Would you be kind enough to sign it for me? It would be an honor and a privilege and a pleasure.
Absolutely. Should I sign it to Sip Stories?
That would be wonderful.
As it's the very, very first one.
That would be wonderful and remarkable. We are going to mark it with this.
Thank you for having me as your first ever guest. An honour. Thanks, Madhavi. There you go.
That's wonderful. And here it is. Wow. What a pleasure, and what a day, and what a moment.
Honestly, it's mine. It's my pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And we hope to see you again very soon, whenever you are here with your next Whisky Bible.
Well, India is like my second home, so I'm so at home in this country. So.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
It was a pleasure to have you and talking to you and knowing the real man under the hat.
That's me.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks.